Welcome to Questions from the Closet. I'm Ben Shalati.
And I'm Charlie Bird. Each episode, we discuss a question we commonly get asked as LGBTQ Latter-day Saints.
We're not trying to answer this question or come to a consensus, but simply sharing our perspectives. Today's question is there a place for my family at church?
Ben and I are not terribly diverse and share many opinions and life experiences. For example, neither of us iron our clothes.
However, there are some pretty big differences. For example, I steam my clothes.
Wow.
So exciting.
What does that mean?
Well, I have a steamer.
Like the little...
Yeah.
One of my mission companions have one of
It's
those.
in my bathroom.
I haven't seen it.
It's on,
Does it work well?
Yeah, it works great. Actually, I steam my shirt at night, and then when I'm in the shower, I just leave it in there. My bathroom's so small, it also helps with the wrinkles there too.
I feel like if my grandma is listening from heaven, I just need to apologize because she loved ironing. And I'm sorry that I'm not carrying on the tradition.
Okay, so I used to iron because Charlotte, of course, has an iron, but she rearranges the house all the time, and so then the ironing board ended up in her bedroom, and then I just
And that's kind of awkward.
Yeah. So one time I stole it and then took it back when I was done. I was like, I don't want to keep doing that, so I just bought a steamer.
I'm lazy. I just spritz my stuff if I need to, and then throw it in the dryer.
Yeah, that works great too. But the steam, it takes 2 minutes for a shirt, maybe.
I like the bubbly noise.
Oh yeah, it's great. So yeah, so our clothes aren't terribly pressed,
Anyway.
and no one is impressed at this conversation.
Well, we like to provide a variety of voices and perspectives, and today we're joined by Sadi Rogers.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Sadie.
So yeah, I'm Sadi Rogers. I'm 32 years old. I born and raised in Gilbert, Arizona.
I love Arizona so much.
Do you?
Yeah.
The gasp.
The gasp.
I do love Arizona. Anyway, sorry.
It is a great place. I love Arizona too. I go back and visit often. Grew up there. Grew up in the church. Played sports all my life. I was, as you would say, a tomboy. And I went to Boston University for college.
Fancy.
I ended up graduating from WGU, which is actually here.
Western Governors.
Yes. Yeah. Western Governors University. And I got my degree in special education.
Oh.
Yeah. And then in Boston, I got married to a man. We had 3 kids together. They're 11, 9, and 7. And then we moved to California, to Southern California, and that's where I live now. And I also work as an EMT in a hospital in the ER. So.
Awesome.
Wow, that's exciting. So, Sadie, can I tell you something fun about your name?
Yes.
So, Sadie's not a super common name, but it was my great-grandma's name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Sadie's like a family name in the Shalati line.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I really like it. My parents spelled it a little weird. It doesn't have an E at the end. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I get people that are like, is your name Sadi? Or, but it's Sadie.
My phone, when you text me, it says, text message from Sadi Rogers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Siri also says
I'm
Sadi.
like, who? I'm like, oh, it's Sadie.
Yeah.
But my great-grandma was from Lebanon, so different than Gilbert. Although still a desert.
Still a desert.
So there you go. Anyway, we should talk about why you're here today.
Yes. Also, I guess an important part of my journey, I got divorced in 2020, and I have since gotten remarried to my wife, Quinn, and we've been married for 6 months now.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that? I have a lot of questions.
There's a lot here.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Okay, so you're married to your husband. You have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know? Do you identify as gay, lesbian?
Yeah, gay, lesbian, queer. Yeah.
Was there a comma there? Or is it like a gay lesbian or like gay, comma, lesbian?
Oh my gosh.
Comma,
I guess commas. Yes,
okay.
commas. Yeah.
So, when did you know that going in? Had you
So in high school, I had some experiences with women. But at that time, I saw that as a bad thing. It wasn't something that I wanted to integrate into my being, right? It didn't fit into the framework that I believed in.
Yeah.
So, I actually tried to go to therapy when I was in high school, and the therapist tried to tell me I was gay. And I was like, I don't want to go to that therapist anymore. I don't like that. That doesn't fit with what I want. So then I went to college, met my husband, and liked him enough. I generally like men. You guys are really nice. So
Thank you.
got along with him really well. And
Sadie,
fell in
I
love
like you
with him.
too.
Good. So I didn't tell him before, but about a year in, I told him, I was like, hey, I had these experiences with women in high school. And he was like, well, is it going to happen again? And I'm like, nah, not going to happen. We're good. And then around, it was about...
Wait, what was that conversation like? Like emotionally, what was that like to tell him? That
was a really hard thing for me to just, you get like the shaky feeling and, I think I'm going to pass out. But I've had to have conversations like this many times in my life, and it's the same feeling. But it's scary, but it's also, I know this needs to happen. Luckily, my husband was very kind. He's a very kind man. So he took it well, and it didn't shake our relationship at all. And then later it was like 2016, where my kids were a little bit older, so I had time to, like, you're out of survival mode and you can focus on yourself a little more. Yeah. And I realized that I still had this desire for women. Like, it was still a big part of me that I wasn't acknowledging. And so in 2016, I told him that I felt like I was bisexual, because that was a really nice framework to keep my family, but also acknowledge this part of me that was so there that I couldn't figure out. So that was really nice. And he, again, handled it really well. He was like, hey, people are bisexual, we're cool. So I had to have a lot of hard conversations with him, but we were in a marriage. That's what you do, right? So I came out as bisexual then. And then I guess I'll just kind of continue with the story.
Tell us more what happened.
Things were actually really good. 2019, at the beginning of 2019, my marriage, I felt like, was in a better place than we had ever been. I was Relief Society president, and I had this close friend that I realized I was having more than just friendship feelings for. There was more there. So I went to my husband again, gonna have one of these hard conversations, and I just said, I'm feeling these feelings and I don't know what to do with it. And we talked about it, and because we were in such a good place at that time, we both kind of decided, well, I can keep this friend. I can have feelings for somebody, but I don't need to act on it, right? Like, it's something I don't have to engage in. And it's a very reasonable thing to do, but harder to do in practice than in theory. So a few months later, I ended up kissing this woman while I was married. And then here comes another, I know it's a hard conversation that I have to have, because I'm at this point in my life where I know I cannot hide this part of me anymore, this, my sexuality, and that is a betrayal of myself as well, because I didn't want to be doing that to either God or my husband. So I ended up telling my husband, and I ended up going to my bishop. And I started through the repentance process at that point.
Can I ask you a really personal question?
Let's do it.
So if your marriage was better than it had ever been, if it was good, why the feelings for this woman?
Yeah, I've been to a lot of therapy from that, right? I was like, why, when things were so good, why would I have felt attraction towards her? And, there's a few things that I've realized may have come up. One is that, for me to be like sexually attracted to my husband, it took a lot of work for me to do that. But for this woman, it was so natural, those feelings. So there's that. There's also, and I think that might be at the basis of it, is just that there's this innate part of me that connects on a deeper level with women than with men. And so that was surprising to me too, because up until that point in our marriage, I hadn't felt like that for anybody before. So it kind of came out of nowhere for me, and I was surprised, and I ended up doing something that was hurtful to him and to a lot of people.
That's a really, really vulnerable thing to share in such a public way.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now?
I feel like, honestly, this is a big part of my story, and it's not a pretty part of my story, but I can't pretend it didn't happen. I can't wash over and act like this isn't a part of it. So it feels important to me to share, because also I think this kind of thing happens more often than people think sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people hear that, oh, this has happened to somebody and they're coming out on the other side, I hope that gives people hope. So I guess I'm hopeful that this will serve a purpose and I'm not just crucifying myself.
Airing the dirty laundry.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Great. So you and your husband, this is hard for him, hard for you.
Yes.
What happened next?
It was a really hard time. I went to therapy, and during this time I'm also like, I'm reading my scriptures every day. I'm to conference talks every day, praying, and I'm getting 2 impressions from God. One is be still, and the second is get to know yourself. So and I'm going to therapy every week, and I realize, okay, like I'm gay. I'm sexually attracted to women, and more so than men, and this is a part of me. And I think I was, in the church we talk about repentance and what a beautiful process that is. And I was hopeful that going through this repentance process, it would end up looking a certain way that I could keep my family. Mm-hmm. But what ended up happening is as I'm getting to know myself more and realizing this part of myself, it ended up meaning that I was going to be in a mixed orientation marriage, that this was a mixed orientation marriage. And that was something I wanted to do. I didn't want to lose my family, but I also didn't know, I know statistics about mixed orientation. So I was nervous about it. But in the end, it wasn't something that my husband was willing to engage in. That wasn't something that he wanted to do. So we got divorced amicably. Which was really hard. So at the beginning of 2020, I'm getting divorced. I've lost my friend group. I've now assumed an identity that I've spent most of my life not wanting to be, right? I'm like, okay, I'm gay. This is who I am. And also my best friend from the time I was 4, she died of cancer.
Oh, wow.
So that's beginning of 2020, and we all know what happens in February and March of 2020.
Yeah, lots of loss, lots of change, lots of isolation.
Yes,
Oof.
It was rough. And so I was feeling really, really depressed, and I ended up reaching out to North Star, actually, to find a group of people that wanted to live within the church, keep their covenants and identify as gay. Mm-hmm. So I reached out, and that's actually where I ended up meeting my wife, Quinn. And one of the cool things that happened there was when we first started just by exchanging emails back and forth, she had this line where she just said, "I wouldn't change being gay even if I could." And I was like, wait, what?
Didn't it just ruin my life?
Yeah. I was in this space where being straight was ideal, and being gay was just something that I had to deal with. It wasn't ideal, but I needed to power through, Mm-hmm. And for Quinn, it was like, no, I'm glad that I have these attractions, this is a part of me that I think God is proud of. Mm-hmm. And that shifted my whole paradigm from that point. And honestly, mental health wise, saved me.
So how did you get to that point? Because it sounds like in your case, and I hope this is okay to say, I hope it's not insensitive, but your orientation really did damage some important relationships and negatively impact where your life was. Mm-hmm. So how did you, because I'm just thinking how hard that was for me as a single person to think about my orientation as a blessing or a strength. And it never really negatively impacted anything. It didn't have baggage attached to it other than my own mind and heart, Mm-hmm. So how were you able to make that shift right after it had been just this uprooting thing?
Yeah. Well, the shift, I think, it happened gradually, but also I still feel shame. I still go back and I grieve those things that I wanted. I grieve having an eternal family in that sense, you know? So I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm better, everything's fine. I'm happy everything happened for a reason, because I still work through some of that today.
Yeah.
But I also feel just like talking to Quinn and hearing other people's experiences has helped me learn, it was hard, going through those things, losing my family the way I wanted it to be, or the way I thought God wanted it to be, was really hard. But I can't go back anymore. This and where I am at now, I feel is where God wants me. So I just really kind of had to shift my paradigm, instead of saying, look at all these bad things or these people that I've hurt. And I've had to be like, okay, this is where I'm at now. How do I do good moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're trying to be in this really nuanced space of, this is still hard. I still have issues with my orientation, and I'm not totally okay, and yet I'm going to move forward in the way that feels best for me.
Yeah. And I do feel like I'm in a place where I'm like happy about my orientation, and I think it serves a really good purpose. And I really do believe that God loves me, especially when I'm married to Quinn, in this, but it doesn't mean I don't question or worry, because I've grown up in the church where now I'm like, well, where does this leave me? Am I going to get to be with Quinn, in the next life? It leaves a lot of questions that I now have to navigate through and figure out.
Yeah. So what does your family look like now?
Like my immediate family?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Quinn and I are living in Southern California, and we have our 3 kids. Mm-hmm. And my ex lives very close, and he actually just got married. So his wife and stepson are going to be moving in with him, and we pass the kids back and forth. And yeah.
And what's your relationship like with the church?
So the church has been, it's complicated right now.
And you still live in the ward where you were the Relief Society president?
Yes, I still live in that ward. So,
so that same congregation has seen all of these changes. And
yes.
It's been pretty quick. This is within the last 3 years that
yes.
basically all of this has gone down.
So you went from Relief Society president to divorced
COVID,
to dating.
Yes. So Quinn and I started dating over, in the pandemic when nobody was going to church. Mm-hmm. We, and this was a prayerful decision on my part. I asked God, I was like, hey, I'm feeling feelings towards a woman again. I will run away if I need to. And his answer to me with that was, just love her like you want to love her. And so that's when I decided to date her. So we started dating, and nobody's gone to church, I'm at home, I'm reading my scriptures, I'm doing Come Follow Me with my kids. And then early 2020, actually I think it was April 2021, sorry. Early 2021, I get a call from my bishop. And he says, are you living the law of chastity? And I was like, whoa. At that point, I wasn't ready to talk to my leadership. In my head, I was like, if I'm going to marry this woman, I need to go talk to my leadership and talk about maybe a counsel or something. But I just wasn't at that point yet. We were dating seriously, but I just wasn't at that point. But so I get the call. He says, are you living the law of chastity? And
that must have been very jarring.
It was jarring.
I feel like that's strange over a phone call.
Yeah, I mean, it was the pandemic, so he
gotcha.
couldn't necessarily call me in. I mean, he could have, but the rules were weird. But so we ended up having 3 phone calls, and I told him, no, I wasn't living the law of chastity. We had 3 different phone calls, and then he sent me to the stake president. So then I went to the stake president and had one of the most jarring, just worst the worst meeting I've had with a leader in the church before. He said some really not great things to me. And I ended up, and he also said, also, we're holding a council for you next weekend. And I left that room crying. And actually I've never had a panic attack before, but I ended up having a panic attack when I got home. Luckily, Quinn was home. And that started probably one of the worst weeks of my life. Just going from when Quinn and I started dating, I told her, I was like, hey, I know it doesn't all make sense, but I want to go to church. I know this is weird, but like the church is important to me, and I love the gospel, and that's where I want to be. And she's been supportive of that. And then to go from that sort of mindset to all of a sudden my leaders being like, hey, if you're not going to live this certain way that we've asked you to live, then we're going to hold a council for you. And very quickly, it was quite jarring. So since then, and so that's kind of like, since then I've tried to go to church a few times, but then I had more conversations with my leaders where they were like, you know, we don't want you making any comments in second hour, and no public displays of affection in any form, no holding hands in the pews, no putting your arm around that person.
So they wanted you and Quinn to act like you weren't married if you would attend a church. Yeah,
and at that time we were just dating, but they didn't want us to be what we were, which is dating. So it honestly shifted church for me. Church used to be this place where I would go and like love the connection, love to worship. And then ever since I've tried to go back quite a few times, and I'm just scared. It's a place where I'm worried that if somebody talks to the bishop, you know, like sees me with my wife, that they'll talk to a bishop and say, hey, this is inappropriate, and it was hard for me too, because they were asking things of me that they weren't asking of heterosexual people. You know, you don't ask a dating couple not to hold hands at church. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't like I was making out with her in the back row or anything. I was just sitting next to her.
I've seen, when I worked at the MTC, I saw a lot of missionaries express a lot of affection.
Right. Affection is something gross. But like affection is something I show towards my kids, or, you know, like I felt like holding hands was a very benign thing to do. And it wasn't even like we were walking around with our arms up, you know, it was just when we were sitting in the pew.
You weren't trying to make statements. You were just trying to be your natural selves.
Yeah. Authentic. And I really didn't have an agenda. I didn't want to go to church and be like, look, everyone needs to be accepting of what I've chosen and what I'm doing. But I felt very silenced by not being able to, like, you know, there were times in second hour where I would feel the Spirit and feel like I needed to make a comment, but I couldn't because of what my leadership had asked of me. So I'm in a really weird spot right now where it's like, I believe Russell M. Nelson is a prophet. And I also believe that I should be married to Quinn. And it's sort of like these paradoxes that just are, you know, all over in my life. But like, I feel like I can't exercise both now. Well, actually, I do feel like I can exercise both, but the only way I feel safe to do so is in my home. So I feel, you know, I believe the Book of Mormon is an inspired text, and I feel God's love when I read it. But when I walk into a chapel now, I do not feel safe. Mm-hmm. I feel worried. And now I worry for my kids too. So it's pretty complicated right now.
Yeah. You know, Sadie, as you've been talking, I've been thinking about things that people have said to me as I've like expressed that, you know, sometimes church is hard or this is painful. And I say, well, why don't you just go somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to say this like a nice way, but like what's keeping you from just letting go of the church?
I still believe this is God's church. You know, I feel his spirit when I pray, when I read the Book of Mormon. These things are important to who I am. I feel that from my leadership, that if you want to be this way, go somewhere else. In essence, what I'm feeling is, yeah, go somewhere else. And that doesn't sit right with me still. I feel like if this is God's church, there should be a space. I believe that in God's church, there's space for everyone. And I think in the church, we do offer that to people sometimes, right? Like if there's a heterosexual couple that isn't married in the temple, we are so happy when they come to church. It doesn't matter, right? Like we're not worried about that. Or if there is a smoker that reeks of smoke, but if they're showing up on Sunday, we're so happy that they come. Why can't we offer the same to same-sex couples?
Yeah.
And what is interesting, that's been my experience in Southern California. Early 2021, Quinn went to her bishop and said, "Hey."
And where was Quinn's bishop?
Centerville, Utah. She went to him and said, "I'm gay, I'm dating a woman, and I just want to still come to church." And, you know, he said, "I encourage you to try to get to the temple." And she said, "I'm not interested." And then he said, "Great. Will you please come? We'd love to have you here. Bring your girlfriend. Bring her kids. We would love to have you here." And so there was this difference in leadership, right? Like I still attend Quinn's ward when we come here, and when we come, it's like we're celebrities. Like the whole bishopric's coming up and being like, "We're so glad to see you." You know, everyone's so happy when we show up. And in contrast, when I go in Southern California, I'm worried. I'll sneak in the back and then run out because I'm just scared of who will see me or what that will bring.
Yeah. And Sadie, thank you so much for like sharing this vulnerableness and you know your love for the church. You know, I could tell you were getting emotional as you talked about your love of the church, and just thank you for that. And Charlie, I'm just wondering how you're taking in this story.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about how it sounds like you want church, like you want there to be a place for your family at church. Like you and your wife and whatever that, like if your kids are with you or not, like you want that to be a place where your family feels comfortable to worship. And it seems like at your home ward, that's not happening, but at your wife's home ward, that kind of is happening, at least to like a better, like it's a better situation. And so I'm wondering, like, what do you think? I'm thinking about like a listener right now, and like, what can somebody do under current policy, under the doctrine, like the way the church is? What can somebody do to create that space for you and your family?
As long as in second hour, as long as I'm not every sentence saying something contrary to the church, you know, like if
You want to be able to just like share
my thoughts, because I haven't changed. My love for the gospel hasn't changed. Yeah. So I guess, you know, I'm not expecting to go to the temple. I'm not expecting to hold a calling or be able to speak in church. I knew those things going into this, that those I wouldn't be able to exercise my membership in the church that way. But it was the added things where no public displays of affection. That's saying you're not okay with who I am, that my family isn't welcome there. Because my family, I know it's different than other families, but why do I have to pretend it's not a family? Because it is. Maybe, you know, I guess in the church we don't believe that God recognizes it, but he still recognizes us as people and wants us to be there and worship him, right? Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I guess that's just an inclusive space without having to take extra measures. I feel like there were extra measures being taken to make sure that I didn't influence anybody, maybe.
So it's kind of like feel like you're viewed as a danger.
Yeah, a threat. Yeah, very much so. And I don't want to put anybody in danger. Like, it's a really weird place to be, because I guess if you do view mine and Quinn's marriage as a sin, I guess maybe we are a danger. So that's where I'm at. Like, am I a danger? If I were to show up with my wife to church, would I lure people away from the gospel of Jesus Christ? In my mind, I hope not. I hope, in fact, that would provide an opportunity for people to be like, Sadie's family is different, but look at them showing up to church, and look at them worshiping God in whatever ways they can. I would hope that it would offer that sort of conversation instead of, Sadie and her wife are, gross, and they're trying to push their views on us, I don't want to be a threat. So
see, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about, how my experience has been very different from yours, where I've just felt just like really pulled in towards, and our life circumstances are different, but I remember a couple years ago, I was asked to give a 5th Sunday lesson on ministering to LGBTQ church members. And afterwards, one of the bishopric members came up, and I've shared the story before, but he came up like in tears, really emotional. And he had little kids in the ward. And he said, "I'm just so glad that my kids get to grow up in a ward that you're a part of."
Oh my gosh.
And that was just so kind. And now my current bishop, every year since I work at BYU, he has to like sign an ecclesiastical endorsement for me, but it's like just done through email. And he texted me like on the day he got it. He said, "I just filled out your ecclesiastical endorsement." He said, I've never been so honored to put my signature on a document before. Just like these like incredibly kind things. And you're gonna say something?
Well, yeah, but that makes sense, because like in their minds, you are following the harder law where she is not.
Right.
And so I've gotten these kind things, and so I'm not trying to like say like, I'm following the rules and you're not. But my question would be, if someone were to come up to you and say, "I'm so glad you're in the ward," what blessings do you feel like you and your family bring to your congregation?
I think we're really great people. I don't know. I think when we add diversity to our congregations, it makes us, everyone, more godlike, more Christ-like. When we, it's easy to love everyone that has the same views as you. But the thing I think that's great about God's church is that, you don't have to be conservative. You don't have to be liberal. It's a church for all different types of views. And when we sit with people and we have these conversations with people that are different than us, it elevates us and teaches us to be more Christ-like. Like obviously your path is different than mine, but like knowing about how you've gotten to where you've gotten, it's actually like almost directly in opposition to mine, right? Like my revelation is to go be with a woman, and yours, I'm assuming, I don't know your whole story, but it's different than mine, right? But I'm so glad to know you and know that you're doing what you feel like is best. And I feel like I am becoming a better version of myself knowing about your path. And so I guess I'm just saying, if we add diversity, if we welcome diversity in our congregations, we give people a chance to become more Christ-like when it's not easy.
Yeah.
Because it would, yeah.
Say the first time we talked on the phone, I just like the feeling I had about you was like, this is an impressive person. I was like, I was so impressed with your like willingness to like be in hard spaces and like to live your convictions. I remember you saying like this is hard, but I want to be part of this church. I want to participate as much as I can. And I remember you saying, just similar to what you said now, like, I don't want to cause contention. I just want to share my testimony.
Yeah.
And share my experiences with God. And I just think that you're just such a beautiful person that anyone would be so lucky to have in their congregation.
Thank you. That's really sweet. I do, maybe going back to what you were saying, Charlie, there's a point of the story that I missed. My stake president told me they were holding a council for me a week later. And I went into the pit of despair. I was worst mental place I've ever been. And actually my mother-in-law ended up cold calling the General Relief Society board. She called them and said, this is what my daughter's girlfriend is going through. This is what has happened. So they got in touch with a general authority who got in touch with a Area 70 who got in touch with my stake president. And they ended up calling off the council. They ended up killing it. And I don't know exactly their reasoning for it, but it gave me a little bit of hope as to hey, something is off here. It gave me some hope that maybe in the higher up, they're not hunting for, they're not trying to necessarily kick us out. But it makes me think about all those. I am a 32-year-old. I have a ton of support and I have really great people around me. How many people don't have the support that I have and are being pulled into these councils or being pulled in by their leadership and are being rejected so quickly? And that's why we're losing so much of our youth, right? Because they don't have a space that's as supportive and loving as mine. So I guess another point, that I'm trying to make is that leadership, there's hope, I think. I think there's hope for a space where I can come to church. I don't know that there's hope that I'd ever get to the temple, but there's a space for me to worship at church. Mm-hmm. And I think we're just in a spot where we're trying to find that. And it is a hard space. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going through what I go through. But then there's also people that are going through, I've heard of couples that are same-sex couples that are active in their wards. And I think that's a cool thing.
Mm-hmm. How has this been for your kids, Sadie?
Oh, my kids. They are amazing. I think it's been a roller coaster for them a little bit too. So I decided to come out to them first before we told them that we were getting divorced. When I came out to them, they were they were younger, so we explained it so mom and dad are married. Mom has these romantic feelings, and the romantic feelings for women, so mom is gay. And they actually didn't have a ton of questions. My youngest was
kids kind of seem to be like that. They're okay.
Thanks.
This is how the world is. All right.
Yeah. My youngest was mom's gay and that's okay. And we're yeah. And so that's the chant now is mom is gay and that's okay.
And that's what you chant walking to church.
Yes.
Just kidding.
The divorce they took harder. That changed their reality. So that was harder. And then, unfortunately, when they actually delivered for my counsel, they deliver that to you by the mailman. And the kids were with me when the mailman handed that to me, and my face fell. And my daughter looked at me and was what is this? What is that from? It's from the church. Is it bad? And at that point, I wasn't in a space that I could talk to my 8-year-old daughter about what was happening, so I just said, I can't talk about it right now. And then a few days later, I was on one of my phone calls with my bishop, and it was a hard conversation, and I was crying in my room with my door closed, but my daughter overheard, and she ended up slipping a note under the door, and it said, Mom, I know you're gay, and God knows you're gay, and he created you that way, and he loves you. And if people don't like that, you don't have to worry about it. Oh. My 8-year-old daughter is comforting me, who's going through this space, this hard stuff with the church. And they have been really good. They are proud of who I am, and they're so happy to have Quinn in their lives. Just the other day, my daughter again put up on a board, we're so happy that Quinn is an addition to our family. So they are doing really, really well. And I try to create spaces where they feel safe to talk, because I know it's not easy. We have raised them in the church, and that's, there's just some things in conflict here. And, but they're doing really well. We do have a therapy fund saved up for when they want to work through all of this.
Smart. Very wise.
Sorry, I'm going to get emotional here, but I'm going to try and talk through it. I have felt God's love more readily than I ever have in my entire life. And I think it's because I've stopped putting conditions on that love. That, even if I'm married to a woman, God still loves me. And even if I'm gay, my family still wants to hang out with me. And I have these relationships of people that even they've seen me go through all this the last few years, and they still love me. And that is Christ-like love in the purest form. And I've never felt it like that before. And so there are things on this side of the journey that are more beautiful than I could have ever experienced on the other side.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, love that. And just to add what you're saying, Charlie, your question was, for the people who are scared that they might end up in your place. What I'm hearing you say is, if you end up in a place like me, God's still there.
He's still there. And that's been a weird thing for me to feel with the churches. I was worried that if I ever, I loved the temple. I would go every 2 weeks. And I haven't been to the temple in a long time now. And I was worried that separating myself from the temple would, I would stop feeling those good things that I felt at the temple. But I think I'm learning more about God, and that God loves me no matter what. And he will speak to me as long as I'm willing to hear him. And I can't go to the temple, and that was one way that I used to connect to God, and I really loved it. But I have different ways now. He's still there, and he's still talking to me, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Sadie. I think we could also easily point out that, just because someone's in a mixed orientation marriage doesn't mean their marriage is going to end in divorce. And there are lots of paths and lots of ways to
that's why I loved so much what you said about Ben. You were just like, your path is what you're doing and it's working for you, and I'm happy. And my path is what I'm doing. And like, I think that like honoring of agency and like feeling comfortable with our own choices and our own paths is super rare in this space. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing to extend to someone who's had a very different church experience than you.
Yeah.
So you got lots of grace, lots of humility.
Thank you. Yeah, no. And I think that's just because I lived in a space so much of my life when I did feel black and white, right? Like, this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. But now I'm in a space where I never thought I would be. So I don't know. Yeah, I love people and wherever they're at in their journey. And if you're in a mixed orientation marriage, I honor that. Like, I just want you to do what you feel like is best for you and what God feels like is best for you. And that is going to look different than me. And how great that we get to use our agency and we get to choose. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love that. Well, Sadie, thank you so much for coming today and for sharing your story and just for your openness and your vulnerability and for your faith.
Yeah. You rock.
Thank you guys so much. I do just want to say thank you for this space. I think you guys are doing a lot of good, and I'm grateful for both of you.
You're so kind.
All right.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have enjoyed this or other episodes, please consider leaving a review, following us on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook at Questions from the Closet, or sharing this episode with someone you love. And as always, please remember that we do not represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Brigham Young University. We are not trying to be prescriptive or tell anyone what to think or what to do.
You heard 3 perspectives, and there are many, many more. We encourage you to listen to other voices and hear a wide variety of experiences. If you would like to submit a question or share a comment about today's episode, you can email us at questionsfromthecloset@gmail.com.
Until next time.